All right, everybody. Hey, guess what? It is disclaimers with Ed Johnston or by Ed Johnston, whichever way you want to look at it. It is currently Saturday, May 25th, 2019. We got a hell of a good show for you, I hope. Ed just doesn't give me his plans. He just says, I'm going to show up and I'm going to talk. But before he has a chance to, Ed found or discovered somebody had put up a clip of Joe Biden back in 2006 saying he wants to have a fence built. He wants the illegal immigrants to be gone. You know, stop them coming in and everything. I mean, the thing is evidently on. He was probably playing to whoever was there, but he was claiming it at that time. So, considering he's trying to run now, I swear anything that comes out of his mouth is the runs. But with that, how about we play that for you, and you can make your own decision.
The country that is an erstwhile democracy where they have the greatest disparity in wealth. It's one of the wealthiest countries in the hemisphere. And because of a corrupt system that exists in Mexico, there is the 1% of the population at the top, a very small middle class, and the rest is abject poverty. Folks, I voted for a fence. I voted, unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it, I voted for 700-mile fence. But let me tell you, we can build a fence 40 stories high, unless it changes the dynamic in Mexico. And you will not like this, and punish American employers who knowingly violate the law when, in fact, they hire illegals. Unless you do those two things, all the rest is window dressing. Now, I know I'm not supposed to say it that bluntly, but they're the facts. They're the facts. And so everything else we do is in between here. Everything else we do is at the margin. The reason why why I believe the fence is needed is not related to immigration as much as to drugs. I'm the guy that wrote the National Crime Bill. I'm the guy that wrote the National Drug Track. I'm the guy that wrote the law that set up a drug czar. But let me tell you something, folks. People are driving across that border with tons, hear me, tons of everything from byproducts from methamphetamine to cocaine to heroin. It's all coming up through corrupt Mexico. So I would have, as they say in the southern part of my state, I'd have an altar call with those boys. I'd have a little come to the Lord meeting. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking. Any of you know about me. I've been doing this a long time. I've known every single major world leader in every country for the past 20 years. And I know a lot of them well because we came up like you guys do business. I've been a senator. There's only 4 senators served longer than me in the history of the United States Senate. There's 44 senators. The bottom line, folks, is we got to level with these folks. Don't tell me in Mexico, do you expect to get the same kind of treatment that we give other democracies, and then you don't act in a democratic way? Not on my watch. Not on my watch. Yes, sir.
All right, that was Joe Biden back in 2006, talking, and as you heard, as clear as you could, because this guy was recording it off of whatever he had at that time. Basically, he's just being an idiot. He says he wants this, then he turns around while he's running, he says he wants this. Now, here's the thing I want to think for y'all to think about, flat out. In my opinion, anybody that calls America a democracy is one of a few things, or combination of all of them. One is a traitor to the country. Two is a spy. Or three is a moron. Now, it's possible you could be a moronic spy that's a traitor, but but this is not a democracy. We are a republic. Look in the Constitution. Actually, do some of your own damn reading for once, instead of paying attention to CNN or NBC or any of those other fake news. Listen, read, research, and then you'll find out. What most of the mainstream media says is nothing but lies to keep you entertained while they basically fleece you, make you into a good little slave. And with that, Ed, your turn.
Thank you. We'd like to thank you for joining us this evening. And that's a good tape. And then I got another one that we'll get up for next Saturday dealing with, what is her name? Feinstein. How she disgraces children in her own office. And it is very interesting how these people do this, and and then they come back and they go after you, and people accept this stuff. That's what amazes me. It just totally amazes me that people buy into this structure with these public servants. And, and then they send them money. That's the other thing that drives me crazy. They send them money to steal your homes, to rob you, to rape you, and people send these people money to do that to them. It just amazes me. It really does amaze me. I just cannot believe that people do this stuff. But that just shows you, in a democracy, is rape, rob, and pillage. And that's what a democracy is all about. There is no justification in democracy because a democracy covers each other's criminal activities. And also, too, I wanted to get into with warrants tonight, and I'm trying to find it, but also, too, lawyers, officers of the court and judicial branch are unconstitutionally in two branches of government at the same time. Whenever they hire or elected to executive or legislative branch, they violate the supreme powers, the clerks, the balance, the conflicts of interest of law, because that's one thing that you always want to do when you go to court, is always, before you get to court, this is one thing I try to explain to people all the time. They go, I said this to the judge, and it's like, you can't do hearsay in a courthouse. Because when you're in a courthouse, it's hearsay, 100% hearsay. And that's the one thing that people don't get, because they alter the records. It's hearsay evidence. So when it comes down to district attorneys, state attorneys have taken over the grand juries. Yes, they have. I will be putting up, I found an old grand jury's list from Lincoln County when they were throwing them away back in 1990s. They were throwing them away in the dumpster, and in the last pack they were throwing away in 1999, and I got a bunch of them too. And it actually explains that the jury is over the judge compared to the new ones they have out today that explains that the judge is the ultimate power when a judge has no authority in a courtroom at all. He's just supposed to be the mediator. He's not supposed to have authority. He's just the mediator. And that's what surprises me with people, because they, when you have a public servant that's just a mediator and then they lie on the circumstances so that way they can make financial income off of your suffering, misery, and life. And that's the one thing that people got to start comprehending, this fact, because they don't care about you, and that's the one thing that it's interesting, because that tape that we just heard from Biden is one that I sent, and it's like, doesn't he sound like Trump? See, that's the one thing that's always amazed me about these public servants. They sound like each other, and people don't catch on to it. And then they want to argue and fight, and, nobody gets nothing done, or nobody's getting things accomplished because everybody wants to yell and fight and argue. And so it's just one of those things that is very disturbing. So, and I think I man, my Facebook page is. I think we're going to go ahead. You can put that up if you want. Go ahead. I think that'll work. So we have a little thing that we're going to be putting up, so that way people can see. We got more basic stuff you could put. What do they call? I can't think of the name of those things. What were we doing? What's the tag on that? It's like the piracy deal that we did.
Yeah, basically the piracy. Are you talking the attacks?
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then, because we want to put that up. Okay, I'm getting feedback. So we want to make sure that's up and get out there. And, I think I just found it. I hope I did. Because this is one thing I wanted to bring up with commercial. All crimes are commercial. Here we go. This is what I wanted. Let me just copy and paste this and email it to me real quick so that way. And then I want to get into this. So this way we get into the structure of warrants. And so people need to know the purpose of warrants and what they are, lawful and illegal. A lawful warrant has to be an injured man or woman or property damage. They cannot just issue a warrant, and this is the point. Warrants are not issued. They can only be issued technically by a grand jury. And that's the one thing that people need to realize, that grand juries issue warrants technically, unless it's an emergency warrant, and a judge can do that until a grand jury convenes. And that's the one thing that people need to realize with their court systems and our public servants, what they do and how they do the things and what they're getting away with in these court proceedings. Because the courts are yours courts, folks. They're not theirs. They're not theirs at all. They're not for them. Because all they're doing is rape, robbing, and pillaging us. And that's what they're getting away with. Exactly what they're getting away with. So cool. Now I get back here. Now, crimes are commercial. And I'm going to give you the laws and administrative rules here. Crimes are commercial as 27 CFR 72.11. And a warrant is a financial instrument. And, it's sort of getting this out. And the other point is 27 CFR 7, it's all 7211. And it gets into the meanings that even addictions for marijuana use or narcotics or alcohol, such as a commercial crime. They're not injured parties. They're commercial crimes. And also, too, you go to Freedom Law School, and they have a lot of good stuff up there, too. And commercial crimes, because that's what you're dealing with, because you're working on your birth certificate straw man account, and that's what they're running off of and claiming that your the commercial crime is based on whatever they come up with, and then they want to arrest you and kidnap you and hold you for ransom and pay ransom. And so this is the one thing that, when it comes down to it, is seriously, commercials are nothing, commercial crimes. And so when people realize that the system is really ripping you off, but the only way to respond to these people is put it in writing. Because if it ever goes to appellate court or something like that, if it doesn't have that information when it goes to Court of Appeals or appellate court, you lost, because you'd have no arguments going against the judge, the public defender, the attorney, all the public pretenders, because you have nothing going against them. And see, this is the one thing that you've got to start putting this stuff in writing. Because these commercial crimes is what the frustration that we're living with. And I'm going to send this right now to the producer so that way he's got it. But this is the one thing that when we live in this, what they call society, I don't agree with society at all, because I just don't agree with the word society, because that means that we're all supposed to be of the same religion belief. We're all supposed to be of the same structure. And none of us believe in that part. And that's the frustration we are living today. And this is not a joke. We're going through this stuff today. And so when the kids are getting harassed and assaulted in school, you know, I mean, I was reading one of the reports where a kid was locked in a closet. 6-year-old kid locked in a closet in the afternoon, and the teachers thought it was okay because the kid had what they call attention deficit disorder, but it technically is not attention deficit disorder because there's no such thing as attention deficit disorder because we all have it. It's something that is not just unique to one individual. Everybody has it. We all know it. It's been that way all of our lives. So, I mean, when they come up with this stuff and these circumstances, and like I said, when you look at this stuff, read the commercial structure on crimes, on what a judge can write a warrant. You know, once people start discussing that one and start talking about these things, you know, I mean, everybody wants to talk about football. Everybody wants to talk about what's going on in their cell phone. You know, it's really sad when you going down the street today and everybody's on a cell phone. Nobody's paying attention to anything in life anymore. Everybody's off in their own little fantasy world. And, you know, this is a frustration that the kids are going through today because they have no guidance. There's no structure for the kids. And so that's why these public pretenders get away with this structure. Rape, robbing, and pillaging. And, you know, it's like the one thing is that people don't realize for a crime to exist, there must be an injured party. So if you're not an injured party and there's no crime, then there's no ticket. There's no, you know, what they call citation. But citations could only be issued to elected and public servants, registered church members, and registered voters, and all immigrants. Immigration has no rights, has no authority. They have no constitutional covering up. Any fashion, of course, they cover it up for them. And that's the one thing that people have got to realize, that they're getting away with this stuff like this. And always remember, a district attorney is a hearsay witness. No man or woman, no child, corpus delicti. District attorneys is, like I said, a hearsay witness. A district attorney and a judge, a cop cannot write an affidavit to any circumstances. And that's the one thing that people have got to realize, that they don't have this authority when they're doing this stuff. And they're getting away with it because people are allowing them to get away with it. You know, it's like all government officials and agencies have to be registered under the 1938 Foreign Registration Act. And this is the one thing that people need to start realizing, these things about what our public servants are getting away with, what they're doing to the children. And remember, a peace officer is different than a police officer. And there are rules and regulations on both structures. And then, you know, a policy officer is there to make his living off of you. And so make it clearly, you know, federal law also prohibits cities and counties for issuing citations against businesses. See Title 18, USC 891 through 916. Quoted, Section 91, or 891, I mean. So what I'm saying on this one, what I'm suggesting on this one too, is what the law says. They can't write a citation to a business. Well, if you have a corporate name, like a birth certificate, you're a business. I mean, you could open up these Pandora boxes, you know, all across the way it is. You know, and that is the one thing, that no one is bound under constitutional law, and no courts are bound to enforce personal liability. So the courts can't even really go after a person for personal liability. Oh, that's right. There's a difference of a person, personal, and man, woman, and child. And it's knowing the legal and lawful wording and how these things work against ourselves or against them. And people have to look at these things of how they are working their paperwork. And when you file your paperwork, always, put in the corpus delicti structure. Always. If you don't put that in any paperwork you file, your case doesn't go anywhere because you're a corporate man. And so they're going to take it that way. And so that's the way they look at these things. They don't look for your health. They don't look for your children's health, at all. And that's the one thing in Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliances, or confederation, grant letters, marquee, and reprisal, coin, money, bills, credit. The states cannot be doing what they're doing on these things with their credit and, with their title and nobility. That's why it's always recommended, always put in writing and get it certified for a conflict of interest from the judge, the attorney, the clerk. Never forget the clerk, because the clerk is the one that has the power to either make sure the law is done correctly or make sure a statute's done correctly. So if you forget the clerk in that, that's how they get away with a lot of this stuff. See, when I send my emails in, I always put the structure in for the clerks, because I send my letters like I've done for the city and the state here recently. I send it so that way it goes to the county and city clerk and the state clerk. And I'm telling them, file it. It's a recorded record. That's your job. And that's the one thing that people don't realize, that these people have employment status. And I'm going to get into another point here that I'm going to get into with taxpayer fraud. Because, see, when they're using public funding, okay, and I'm going to get back to the computer here in a minute. I'll read you the law on it. When they're using public funding, kidnapping you, taking your car, harassing your children, that's public funding. And that's theft of services. And actually, there is laws on theft of services. Even the Oregon state law has a structure for theft of services. And that's dealing with taxes. So when they're doing that and they're stealing your money, theft of services. And so it's knowing how all these words work, how they perform, and always double check your words. That's the one thing you really want to do. And if you don't have that, I think we had the Bouvier Dictionary up too, beside the Black Law Dictionary. And remember, the Black Law Dictionary, when that came out in the 1300s, was a little joke. And I even had the history on that too, from England, because they thought it was all a joke. And then when people started taking it seriously, all of a sudden it was like, what? And that's where we're getting people in trouble, because they're not reading stuff. Or I always love it when people would yell and scream, I have rights. Well, who gave you the rights? Prove your rights. One gentleman always says, prove it. And he's got a good point there. Because how do you prove your rights unless you filed it? Unless you got a deal, what I'm working on with the county right now, because they're freaking out because I'm filing on them for rights to travel. And I'm arguing with the county right now on the rights to travel. And that should not be an argument. Not at all. And that's the one thing here is. Come on, computer. File ORS 164.125. Theft of services taxpayers pay their public employees to protect their sovereignty. ORS 164.125. Okay, this is in the law. And they're getting away with committing these crimes. And so without the people standing up and filing it in your paperwork, and when you go to court, try to get as many people as you go to court, And, you know, you got to have the backing. And you always have judges that will tell you, oh, you can't film in my court. Well, then that's not a public court. And that's what you have to say. Is this a public court or not? A constitutional Article 3 court. Is this a Constitution court? You know, these are things that people need to bring up. Because remember, the IRS is not a government agency. It's an IMF. And it's part of the, what do they call that, the United Nations. And it's where Trump is pulling there, trying to, you know, pulling us out of the United Nations, and everybody's going, what, why, and how? And it's like people don't even know the law. They don't even read this stuff. They just go by on sound bites on TV, and they react. They don't think. So this is a good one when you're doing your any letter that you're putting together. You know, for your state, because we don't have all the states on that one, but at least I know in ORS 164.125 that the services taxpayers pay their public employees exactly what it says in the law, their statute, to protect their sovereignty. You know, that's the one thing that always stuns me, how we've got all this stuff and we've got all these criminals running around and getting away with all this stuff. And then if you and I do it, man, next thing you know, we got our door kicked in. You know, it's like, excuse me. You know, it's really disturbing when these people are out there waving firearms around when you don't even know what their temper is. You don't know their psychological profile. And that's the one thing that people've got to realize, that this is crazy. And see, the other point that always gets to me, because this came out from the American Civil Liberties Union, and you're going to love this one, because I love it. Because, I mean, I've been fighting with the American Civil Liberties Union for, what has it been, 14 years now? Because they were going to take my case going after the city and the state, and then all of a sudden they realized how deep it was, and the connection of so many senators and congressmen that are involved in House of Representatives. They panicked. And then all of a sudden we can't do that. Basically, they can't go after and do that, because if they did that, we cut off, probably 20% of the state budget right there overnight, or, within the next Senate session, because it's fraud. And they got caught with their hands in a cookie jar. So, but anyhow, a federal judge declares policy for profits, policing for profits, unconstitutional. So that means when they're issuing you tickets and citations to lawful bloodline natives, they're committing a crime. See, people don't write these articles and include the structures of what lawful is, a native is, or what a citizen is, or what an immigrant is. They always just open it, and have one people trying to think, and we're supposed to think the same thing. And that's the thing, is it's not the same thing. It's totally different. It's totally different. And so when we got these things out, and we'll get this posted, and I'll put this in the chat, the deal on the Oregon Trackers tonight when we're done. When we do that, I'll put some of these links up, and I'll put that stuff on with the policing on that, and the structure on warrants. But this is the one thing that people have got to look at these things. Pay attention to what you're doing. It's your family. It's your assets. I'm fighting with the city and county and state right now just to stay on my land, and I'm fighting other people around me too, because they're like, well, shit, you could just sell out and go move in a big city. It's safer for you. And I'm like, it's safer for me being right here, because then that way I'm right in her face, and something happens to me, everybody asks questions. And I do know that for a fact around here. So anyhow, and it's like, you're going to like this one. Citizens are not permitted, catch the word, citizens, are not permitted to act like people in the courts. A citizen is a second class is told that he does not know how to file or fill out fancy lawyer forms. And so this is the one thing that, people do know how to fill out these lawyer forms when it comes down to it. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to do this. It's just gibberish. So in the training with these public servants is that the lawyer system is unconstitutional. It's all hearsay. Lawyers and attorneys, unconstitutional. And everybody says, no, a lawyer's not. Well, and I'm going by what I'm reading in the statutes and laws, what they have written in it, clearly stating this. And the one thing, too, you want to make sure when you're going to court to also, too, get the oath of the officer and get the oath of the judge. And also, too, the clerk oath, too. That doesn't hurt to get the clerk oath. Because, see, all these people have an oath. They cannot get away with it. That's law. And they cannot get away with it. And if they do, it's a crime. But, see, the point is that we've got some good public servants out there, but we got a lot of them that ain't that good. And so it's really difficult for public employees fighting each other on both sides of the coin here of what it is. Who's going to save who? Who's going to protect who? And so it is an interesting structure they got. And that's the one thing. Technically, lawyers cannot charge fees because technically lawyers are supposed to be compensated out of the government fund, the lawyer's fund, and that comes from the lawyers that pay into it. And that's the one thing that, we've got the stuff up there. We're getting this stuff out. And lawyers are officer of the court in the judicial branch. Remember, those are Article 1 courts that you go into for a traffic ticket, child support, your kid's taken away, stolen. So you have to write, if your kid was stolen, personal property, theft, human trafficking, violation of Social Security numbers, the Social Security Act. And so, yes, it does get into it, and that's why I always have fun when people go, can't you just make your letters, 2 pages? Well, sometimes I'll do a 2-page letter, and that'll be basically the headline or the heading for the one that's coming behind it. Because I like to put all this stuff into it, and yes, sometimes it's overkill. And I've had people say, well, I'm a judge, I ain't going to read all that, Ed. And I say, fine, and I go file on them, and then they wonder why they're having problems. And yes, the system does work sometimes on that when you do file on these public servants. I have had success on that myself. I've had success on it. We just had at least another public servant, 2 public servants resigned in the state of Oregon. And you might be seeing another representative that'll be resigning here pretty soon. And that's the one thing that people don't realize, that people are starting to write these things on these people. And you always have to include when you're writing a complaint as a criminal charge. See, they always say, well, use my paperwork. And I don't use their paperwork. I write mine. I will always, if I have to use their heading, I'll alter the paperwork. And if I can't alter it, my paperwork goes behind it. Both sides. Double-sided paperwork when you're doing a criminal complaint. Yes, it's an extra waste of paper. Ink, I mean. But when it comes down to it, when a judge flips over the page, you can't say you didn't see it. That's how they get away with it. Because they go, oh, I flipped over the page. I didn't see anything. It's a white page. There's nothing there. And this is how they actually do this, and this is what lawyers are taught how to get around and to get away from this stuff. And the same thing with cops are done. And that's the one thing that people don't realize. They are really trained in this. A cop cannot search and seize you when they want to. I mean, I've had many times where they say, oh, well, and I tell them, I'll wait for the warrant. I'll wait for the judge's deal. And then a few minutes later, 99.9% of the time, next thing you know, they have a call, and I've had them say, you sit here and wait for me, and I'll be back. Like, what kind of moron do you think I'm going to do, sit and wait for you? You left, I leave. You know? And this is the one thing I want to make sure that you comprehend, that police officers, police supervisors are liable if they authorize or approve any constitutional contact offending officers. So, in other words, the police supervisors are liable for everything that's underneath them, for their actions. So, if they do any unconstitutional conduct, they are liable. And this is White versus Ferry, Farrier, 849F2D322, 1988. And that's the one thing that, always wait for search warrants. I mean, I have nothing to hide in my vehicle, but it's not, it's not hiding nothing. It's my personal property. I can have anything I want in my personal property or on me. My personal property is my body, too. Some people call it a vessel, but I don't like using that word because I'm not a ship. I'm not going to correlate myself to be a ship or to something in that fashion, because it doesn't make sense to do that. And you always want to make a statement for record, but you have to do that in writing. See, if you don't put it in writing, it doesn't exist. And that's the one thing that I have so many conversations with interesting people with times where, the judge tells me, or this is going to tell me, and I've had people where I've gone through this so many times, and, it just gets really frustrating when you're sitting there explaining to somebody, and it's like, how can you not get it? Then you send them a videotape. Here, watch this. Tell me if you get it. So that's the one thing that some people just don't get it. I understand that people take a while to get things. It took me a while sometimes to get things myself. But when you pay anything, a water, electricity bill, or anything, where is the 1099 form? And see, when I go this month, when I go to pay my utility bills and stuff, I'm saving that one, and I'm going in that with that because I want to see that. That's the one thing that, we have a lot of good advice out there, and read it, use it. And so when you read this stuff and you start comprehending, and people say, well, that doesn't mean that. Yes, it does. And you always want a 1099 form when you file anything. And that's the one thing that people sit there and go, well, why should I waste my time doing this or that? But then again, you're going to waste your time at your job because you're not being productive for yourself. You're losing hours. You're losing wage. And so, and they know that. They know that some people are making, $300 a day. And they know that they'll just shell out $150 or $80 or whatever. They won't care. They'll just shell it out, and nobody cares. And that's the one thing that is so sad, so screwed up in a state. Well, all the states come down to it. And so when we do this, file a 1099 form. And the reason why I suggest that is everything you pay for. Your water, electricity form, start filing 1099 forms. And I'm sort of going by a guy that was telling me that he was filing all those 1099 forms, and all of a sudden he never got bills. Because, see, when you file a 1099 form, and the IRS has to respond to a 1099 form. See, they can't overlook it. And there's been police departments and jails and stuff that have actually been, closed down because of that. So, and that's not a joke. File your 1099 forms. Please do these things. Look at these things. Look at the circumstances what you're doing. Because I've been there. A lot of other people that we know have been there. And so, we're learning from each other's errors and mistakes and, misjudgments, and sometimes those things happen. But always remember that statutes and codes are not lawful. They're statute and codes. Lawful is the Constitution, and most of all, folks, most people don't want to hear it, but the treaties are supersede and is equal to the Constitution that runs this country. That's the native treaties. So they have legitimate rights and responsibilities in those treaties. And that's the one thing that people don't look at these things. And I bring this stuff out all the time. I put it in my writings with the treaties. I mean, it's like people don't realize that, hemp has always been lawful. And everybody goes, oh, you're going to go to jail, you're going to get this. But you notice most states now are erasing records. I've got a couple people that says, well, I got friends of mine in jail for that. And I'm like, well, here's a suggestion how you get them out. I mean, it's simple. You file a release on it because they already said it's lawful, so they can't keep you in jail for it. Some of them are doing that because they're doing it to keep their strawman account listings going on the jail. And the commissaries make too damn much money off of the jails. And just for those that are not saying that the corporation president, Trump, but he does have statute authority to keep anyone out of the country for any reason he thinks best. This is 28 USC 1182. And that follows back to the structure of the Immigration Act of 1774, 1777, and the ratified 1778. And I mean, it's there, dig it up, I've done it. We know it's on the new.org and trackers. And also, too, we do appreciate the people that do visit the site, looking at the information, using information for your own, knowledge. Everybody keeps going, well, don't say that, Ed. It's entertainment. Well, technically it could be entertainment, but, when we're looking at the way they're destroying our homes and our country, and everybody keeps saying, well, if you don't pay taxes, this is what's going to happen to you. And it's amazing how people live in fear, because that comes back to the finances structures with warrants. Because when your warrant is issued, it's a financial instrument. A bail bond is a financial instrument. And people don't sit there and correlate these things into the same structure of what it really means. Everybody wants to argue about this word or that word, especially when you can take the same word and it has 10 or 20 other meanings for that word. So not one meaning means anything when it comes down to it, except for the word no. Otherwise, when it really comes down to it is that, we have to protect ourselves. And they are trying to open up this, the democracy with the Vatican and the United Nations is trying to open up this country. And if they get that done, you realize that there is going to be no freedom in the world. And Kate Brown had a bill that I thought was interesting. And I got to find that again because I want to get that posted at the public archives. But I thought it was interesting. She has a bill that will allow her to forgive any terrorist that shoots up schools or anything. And that's basically what the bill reads, too. Any terrorist, rape, rob, and murderer, and the government has the authority to pardon that over the law. What the heck is going on with people today? So we're telling people it's okay to rape, rob, and murder, but as long as that you do it for the government, then you're protected. And that's what we're doing today, it's frustrating that this is going on around us. But when it comes down to the financial structure of warrants, and I'll be putting that up on the YouTube channel tonight, it's looking at these structures, how they work. Because remember, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meanings for the same circumstances. But they just reword it or change the wording around or change the sentence around, and people go, oh, well, that's a new sentence. It's like I had somebody telling me, that, I'm bitching because I should be traveling and doing a lot of other stuff. And, and so I said, well, I'm writing this up for County Commissioner Hall, who's Bill Hall or Claire Hall, whatever name he wants to use this week. But I'm writing this up going, well, hey, if you're allowed to be gay and all this stuff and have your so-called constitutional rights protected, how come ours ain't when we're traveling? How come ours is not protected when we're hunting and fishing to feed ourselves? See, this is what I'm so frustrated with, the double standards, with public employees and their contractors. And a lot of people, excuse me, who don't know how to comprehend what a statute means or code. I mean, I'm still fighting with the city because, they're trying to, still come after me for this, that, and the other thing. And it's, they're losing. But, it's taking a lot of time. And I agree with this where everybody keeps going, well, it's just cheaper to walk away and not deal with it. Well, that just shows me how people just have no respect for themselves. Because when somebody's done that type of tragic to your life and interrupted it, as their book says, do unto others, you want others to do unto you. So, I mean, and I have more comprehension of the Old Testament than this New Testament that's so liberal. When you read it, it's scary. And, that's the one thing that people are not paying attention to. Religion, how it affects. I mean, I'm watching this stuff while going around the internet and the news going on. And religion keeps popping up. Now we got a couple states that want to put the Bible as the foundation for the government. That's called democracy. That's called morons doing that. Because they don't care about their children. I mean, I've had many elected and public employees say, hey, the kids are on their own. They're 18. I did my job, and so I don't have to deal with them anymore. And then we wonder why the kids are in and out of these programs and why these public employees are going, well, we need more money. We need more money for this program and that program. Well, that's the point. They're creating the jobs for themselves. And that's what lawyers do. Attorneys do that. So when you read these information, analyze it. Take a dictionary out. Cross-reference words. Look at things. Go that direction. Look at cross-referencing whatever it is. Because I always try to do it at least minimum three times, or 4 or 5, but minimum 3 times when I'm doing my research to make sure that what I'm putting up is correct. And I always have fun when people go, well, did you verify this? And I have to go back to my response is, did you verify it? What are you asking me for? I put it up there. I already researched it. This is already in the administrative role. That's going back to the structure in Section 035 for, or 135 for tax fraud. See, they have these rules and regulations on them. And yes, I know it's difficult to get them to force the regulations on themselves. But, I mean, it's the same thing in your home. How are you going to force it in your home? So, I mean, you have to step out, but when you put this stuff in, when you're filing your criminal charges, don't forget to put it in risk management. If it's county, make sure it's for the county and state. If it's a city, it has to be county, state, or city, county, and state for your registration on that stuff. So you have to include all this stuff. People forget that they miss certain jumps or leaps when they do their paperwork or some of the research. And it's stepping out, looking at how am I going to do this? And I have to put in the structure of what they're doing wrong. And most people say, well, they already know what they're doing wrong, so you have to put it in there. And it's like, no, because if it ain't in the instrument that you put together, then it's meaningless, because when you go try to do something on your case or something on somebody else's case, you have no filing. You have no backup. You have to create the file. It's your responsibility to create the file. And that's where I think a lot of people get confused or miss that point. Because it comes down to, when you're filing with the clerk, when you're filing with the judge. Of course, I don't like filing with the judge. Now, the other point, too, when you're going to these structures, you can always file in Washington, D.C. We'll have that put up in tandem with the Article 3 Court in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, excuse me, is the only lawful court in the country. And Washington, D.C. is where their administration head is, and that's where they have to go by administrative rules, and that's when you file their complaints, and they have to file that complaint with their proper authorities, and, if they verify it's legitimate, then it has to be served to the marshals, and then the marshals serve them. It's learning how all these agencies come together and how they work. Now, I know we have different corrupt public employees in there, but we do have structure that is there for ourselves. And I just had a flash of like Joe Biden telling everybody, hey, nobody cares about the Constitution. And it's like, I hate it when these Democrats will even say that and put it in, even in public hearings. They'll say it in public hearings. Nobody cares about the Constitution. Well, see, that's called psychological warfare right there, because they already spent $1 billion on mind control, so they already know that certain words they say pings in your brain. It sticks in your mind. It pings there. And so that's the one thing they go for those cheap points. Because, like I said, when it really comes down to it, they don't care. And until we start caring about the structure around us, we're not going to see much movement. But there are a lot of people that are starting to do this stuff, making the movement really starting to happen. And if it wasn't for Trump, none of this stuff would actually be going. Everybody keeps attacking Trump, and it's like he's the head of the president of a corporation. And the other point, you really can't attack the man because he's from New York City. Oh, that's right, New York City. Isn't that owned by the Vatican? The state of New York is not. But New York City is a central part of international law, and that is partly controlled by the Vatican. So, excuse me, it is looking at all these agencies, how they come together, how they work. And so when it comes down to gay and lesbians and all this stuff, everybody has equal rights. The Constitution, everybody keeps going, oh, we have to pass this bill. We have to pass this bill. No, you don't. You just have to enforce administrative rules that are already on the book. And then the other point is that we have to look at these things when they fail. And so when they fail, that's when you have to write these criminal charges. If you get your kids taken away, first thing you do is write the criminal charges on the caseworker, the clerk involved, that's the city and the state, because you want to see where they got that warrant. And that's the one thing I was talking to a couple people this last week. And, I asked them, where's the warrant when they took your kid? Well, they told me they didn't need one. Oh, so they told you. So in other words, you believe what they told you when they stole your kid, your property. See, that's what amazes me about people. They get told things, but that just shows me how convinced they've been watching these TV programs like Law and Order and all this stuff. I mean, even go back to Barney, what was that, Hawaii Five-0, not Barney, not Hawaii Five-0. Oh, I'll think about it here in a minute. But anyhow, it's like a lot of these movies and TV shows will bring up stuff on them, and people don't pay attention to sometimes when they put in the correct wording in their lines. Because it just goes over their head unless you know them. Because they just assume. It's like people I know. I'll just hire an attorney and they'll handle it for me. Yeah, it costs me $50,000, no big deal. Yeah, and I know people like that who will hire an attorney and put $50,000 down. And I'm like, why would you do that? And then they get upset because they didn't get their property returned. Well, you didn't file your property as lost. And then one thing, too, is your property is identity theft, so your driver's license, identity theft, your mortgage, identity theft. I mean, everything that's a contract, identity theft unless you have done it in red ink with your seal. And that's the one thing that people need to comprehend. That is very valuable. And so when you do that, I've been, done a lot of court cases myself over the years, and a lot of times when you do that type of stuff, all of a sudden you never hear from the court. And I've been on the phone with people when they called the court because they're getting ready to at the clerk to the judge, and all of a sudden, because the people are panicking because they weren't sure if they had a warrant out for them or not, the corporation warrant off their birth certificate. And so it's like, they don't have a warrant. So look at the structure of the warrant, see who wrote the warrant, and there's no warrant. And also, too, the Ninth Circuit Court just came out 2 years ago and said, oh, that's right, the police, any enforcement agency has to have a warrant before they can take your kid. And a warrant means that an injured man or woman for that party, for the child or whatever, is a witness to the circumstances and signed a warrant. Signed a complaint for the warrant to happen, the injured party structure. If that's not done, all these things that are supposed to follow through, is not done. I always love it when, I've been arrested, kidnapped and held for ransom quite a bit in this county. For stupid shit. Telling the judge off, or just going to court and telling the judge off. And I've got them on YouTube videos. That's one thing. Oh, you can't film your courtroom. I go in and I film. I've had a friend of mine that was arrested 1 year for filming in it, and they came out and arrested him because the judge didn't want he didn't want it to be aired. That's on YouTube right now, where I'm telling him off. So if you go on YouTube and you see Lincoln County Sheriff Deputy coming out and arresting Mr. Walker, kidnapping him for financial gain, it's interesting because we just left the courthouse in my court case. We got in the elevator. We're down the street. We just left the elevator and going out the parking lot. And we're getting in the car. Next thing you know, we got the deputy running up to us. And, the judge says, I need to arrest you because you videotaped the court hearing. And that's the one thing that I'm trying to explain to people. When you get those type of situations, now, the guy kidnapped you and held you for ransom. Theft of public services. And that's where I'm coming from on theft of public services, because he used taxpayer money to haul his or her rear end to kidnap and rape, rob, and pillage. That's tax fraud. And so, like I said, the one thing is when you pay your utility bills and stuff, do a 1099 form. It's going to start freaking them out because, hey, here's the law. You have to go by it. I don't. You're the corporation. Read what the law says. They have to go by it because they got an income. So when you go in and pay water bills or anything, it's undetested income. I've been after the city and the state and the county for, these records, the tax records for years. Okay, and I just pulled out a bill when I did the school board recall back in 2006, 2002. I recalled the entire Lincoln County School Board, over $30 million that I've proven. We had a guesstimate of $150 million, but we had $30 million that we could prove, and that's been in writing. And I will eventually get that copied and put up. I got to get that copied and put up on the website new.org and trackers, because you can see. I've been battling this stuff for years. Like I got, people around me going, "Oh, quit wasting your life, wasting your time. Who cares?" Well, that's right. Who cares? But me, or you? And when people do that negativity, that's when we have these problems with our children, because the children listen to these negativities. And they're brought up by this structure. And so they're making their own uneducated conclusions with no knowledge. Now all of a sudden it's becoming a fact to them, but they have nothing to base it on. And so, the kids today, man, it's really sad watching the kids today because being, going to school and stuff like this, they don't get education. When I always see the schools have the fire engine or the police department or the public employee day at the school, to me, that's crime. That's waste of tax dollars. That's tax fraud and tax extortion on both sides of the coin, from the school district and the police department or the fire department there. What are they doing there? Oh, that's right. They're supposed to be out there putting their presence out to calm the kids down, so that way if they see them, they treat them as friends. So if they go have an issue, to go to them without going to the parents first. It's all psychological. Man, remember, all this stuff comes back from Nazi Germany, going back to 1931. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we have today, we think is new. A lot of the stuff was already there. You know, I mean, and that's the one thing that people don't get. And just because our technology changes, but our Earth does not. Well, except for their drilling and that type of stuff. Causing the earthquakes and the plate to shift and the stuff we know. But that's the point here. How do we solve these issues? One solution is working together, and when you see somebody out there having an issue, write letters, back them up. You know, I've been watching Facebook here lately, and I'm watching people putting out stuff, asking people to be at the courthouse now. We're putting this up. We want to be able to make sure it's audio and videotaped. See, the one thing is you'll have judges say, well, you have to ask me permission. I'll find the law, and we'll get that put up, because you don't have to ask the judge permission to record or tape in the courthouse. It already federally says you have a right. It's called public record keeping. And so when they sit there and say, well, you can't videotape in my deal, isn't this public record keeping? You really want to set up the judge? Say that. Well, if I can't videotape, this case is dismissed, and thank you. See, it's knowing how to snap these things off and talk to your servants. It's knowing who to talk to in the public. I have public servants that I actually do trust. You know, if it happens to them, I'll be backing them up. You know, and I have other public employees that if they get in a situation, I have to analyze the situation if it's worth backing them up or not. But the other ones, I won't have a questionable thinking. I'll just do it. But that's the problem we have, that we shouldn't be acting and living this way with our public servants, our peace officers, because we're supposed to technically have peace officers that were supposed to be underneath the sheriff to help him out, before the sheriff ended up with a department. And then, you know, when you're looking at all these history points of how these things come together, and believe me, they are rewriting the history. Oh, and I will be putting up, I just found the paperwork for the 1846 treaty with the British government. The one that's not altered. The one on the internet is altered. Because the original treaty in 1846 says the state of Oregon is not to pay any income, property taxes, anything. We're not supposed to have any taxes in Oregon. And remember, all taxes are voluntary. You know, and that's the one thing I'm going to be going after on, you know, the new sewer tax they just raised up and stuff. I'm going after them. You know, I'm writing these things up, and like I said, once I get these other couple ones up, I'll get them up there so people can look at what I've done. You can use examples, but remember, you are a man or woman, and you're supposed to be an adult of responsibility. And that means responsibility to yourself and a responsibility for those around you. So, I mean, and it's not taking their responsibility, it's just having responsibility. Because remember, most people, kids today, most people don't even have responsibility. They don't even know what it is. And that's the saddest part we are dealing with today. So, but the one thing, too, is to look at your paperwork. And if you have suggestions, there are a lot of us out there that, you know, we don't mind helping or throwing some suggestions out, but we're not taking personal liability for your actions. We can give you some of the information, the education along the way, but that's the best we could do. And so that's where we're at today. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and open up the line, see if anybody would like to speak up.
All participants are unmuted.
Now, before anybody speaks up, I do want to say, due to Ed setting precedence of this, if you are wanting to speak up, you're going to have to start every third sentence with, you know, okay?
Come on, my counter ain't that bad today.
I was giving you some leadway. It would be.
I know.
Ed, I don't.
Sometimes, you know.
Ed, I don't know.
What?
I wouldn't be bothered to listen to the program if I knew. But anyway, yeah. I don't have any vehicles. I have automobiles.
No, you have covered wagons.
I have automobiles. UCC 9-109 talks about automobiles, extensions of the home.
Right.
And so I don't have a vehicle or a motor vehicle which would fall under the Department of Transportation and the federal standards. That would be statutory and not law. But also, I wanted to mention too that we have no judges here.
Mm-hmm.
We have no judges here whatsoever. We have executive administrators.
Right.
If you read FRC versus GE,
Mm-hmm.
it says judges do not rule on statutes, codes, and policies. Judges rule on law. Executive administrators rule on statutes, codes, and policies.
Right.
So therefore, there are no judges here. They're executive administrators for the corporation. And the sheriff's department is a policy department for the corporation as well, because they're a department
Right.
Under the Police Powers Act, the Policy Powers Act, for the corporation. They're not a constitutional entity anymore. They've left the Constitution. They take an oath and they violate it immediately. Well, their position itself violates their oath of office. But and I just wanted to point those things out, that there are no judges here. They're executive administrators for the corporation. And truly, that's not a courthouse. That's an administrative arena. Because they don't deal in law there at all. They deal in statutes, codes, and policies. And if you go back to FRC versus GE, judges do not rule on statutes, codes, and policies. But I've enjoyed your rant tonight, Ed. I've enjoyed it again. And I'm here, and if there's anything I can do, let me know. And
you got my phone message the other day on that question you asked me, didn't you?
I didn't get. No, I didn't get back to you. I haven't gotten on the internet yet.
Oh, no, I left it on your phone.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, the question you asked me on, I forgot what it was. I'll remember here.
About the capital S, lowercase s, Supreme Court, the two Supreme Courts.
Right. Well, no, you asked me another question. That was, oh, God, what was it? I just had it on the page, and I moved my page. But I'll have to remember that again, because you asked me a question on, what was it again? Anyhow, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, I did ask you about the lowercase s and the uppercase s on the Supreme Court, though. And people have no recognition of the fact that there are two types of Supreme Court. And I don't know whether it's two jurisdictions within one court or whether it's how that works, because in the Constitution, in Section 8, it talks about the Supreme Court with a lowercase s. And if you go to D.C., they're going to put you to the Supreme Court with an uppercase s, which is not the same thing. You can't have two names for the same thing and it still be the same thing.
That's why when you write your paperwork, you have to put the capital, whatever it is, and the lower right behind it. You don't use all capitals ever.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I don't use capitals.
Yeah, it gets real screwy because, I was asking you about the styles menu, about which styles menu he's using.
Oh, yeah, and I got that pulled up, too, and we haven't put them up yet on the website, too, but I've got to find that email because, like I said, right now, until you're on a computer, it's really hard for me trying to put everything on your machine.
Yeah, it is, because I'm kind of, like I said, between two houses. I bought one. I'm trying to get moved out of one and into the other, and I'm paying rent in one place and paying house payments in another, and I'm busier than the one-legged polka dancer. But anyway, you take care of yourself, and I don't want to deprive anybody else of an opportunity to speak.
Okay, I appreciate it, Daniel.
Oh, you're welcome, and you take care.
We'll talk to you again soon. And, now, like I said, as soon as you hopefully you get your internet connected up so I can send you that other information we talked about, too.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I just want to say I appreciate you, and to be grateful is one thing, and to appreciate is another thing. To appreciate is to make more than it was.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. Thank you.
Yeah, and you take care. We'll catch you later.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye.
And like I said, I will be putting up on the YouTube channel tonight once we get off the air, and I'll put up the federal stuff for the policing for profits unconstitutional. And this is what gets to me. This is done by the ACLU. And how come, if the ACLU has done this, how come it hasn't changed in some ways? See, remember, the ACLU is a structure that works for the British government, because they are part of the American, American Lawyers Association. Now, it was founded in, I think it was 1870, 1877, August 1877. And it was founded under the British government. And it actually says that in their own pages. And I've read their policies and structure, and it does say it. So that's the one thing that people, you got to realize that they say things. It's like, Biden saying, we need to put fences up. But then all of a sudden, he's getting paid off on the other side. We can't put fences up because that's going to interfere with people's lives. And I've heard some crazy excuses for not putting up the wall. And it's like, we're not Germany. We're an American structure. And we're not open to the world. The Constitution and the treaties are not for the world. We are not a country of immigrants. We are a country that have been invaded by domestic and foreign terrorists. And that's the one thing that people need to start realizing. That is a real fact. Because we've got terrorists that are running us. I mean, look at what's going on in, what is that, Minnesota or Mississippi? Minnesota. No, what was the other one? Missouri. Dealing with all the structure, what they're going on right now with the Muslims. Giving the Muslims more rights than what they have. And what they don't have, because Muslims are not supposed to be in our country, technically. And that's the one thing that always gets to me. We have laws in place, and then we have public policy officers that are not enforcing the laws that they're getting paid to do it. That's why I'm suggesting to people, when you write your claims, it's called theft of taxpayer funds.
Hey, Ed?
Go ahead.
You said it's in Missouri?
I think I was wrong, wouldn't I?
Well, I'm not sure, but if they are doing that in Missouri, then that'll be a state of misery.
Yeah, true, too. We always thought it was Missouri. That's the way I thought the name was that way when I grew up as a kid. So that is the one thing, and I just like this. Trump just came out with a message. Trump says Comey and company are guilty of treason. So that means his administration is going to be going after them filing under treason. And they already got nailed for not filing and registering of the 1938 Foreign Administration Registration Act. And that does mean a lot. See, and that's the one thing that when you do your paperwork too, we have that up on the website too, is put that in it. Ask them about the 1938 Foreign Administration Act, and you want a copy of their statement. And if they don't have a statement on file, that's a federal crime. And that has to be filed in Washington, D.C. and with the United States Marshal's Office, because they're the ones that technically have the legal or lawful authority to do anything about it. And see, that's what always disturbs all of us, because we watch these people that are getting away with stuff, we most of us have conscience, and you can just tell by the people that don't have conscience. So that's the one thing that is interesting. And, it's like back in, in my I live in a town about 3,700 people. And a couple of years back, they were having this big crosswalk sting in my town. Well, we have very few crosswalks. Some of our areas around here are dirt roads. And what do you mean a crosswalk sting on, a little hick town? That shows you that there's the revenue, pushing for the revenue. And that's all these people care about is the money. And that's the one thing that gets to me about the state of Oregon right now, crying about PERS. And it's like I keep trying to explain to people, you got to realize PERS, the money is there. When I was up at the Capitol back in even 1999, they were talking about PERS back then. And people were going, "Oh no, Ed!" The money they were spending the money on their own little pet projects, taking money out where they didn't have no rights to take money out of the structure at all. So that's what's always frustrating, how they're getting away with doing a structure. And I know I've filed on it many times. I've already spent literally hundreds of dollars out of my own pocket filing paperwork on these people and going after them. But it really sucks when you have these policy people that won't even enforce their own policy when you're filing on these things. I've seen administrative change has really been jumping around here lately. But, that helps, but we want to see these people in prison. They don't deserve their retirement because they already passed that point. They're not entitled to their service because they failed us. Okay? When they come down to that stuff, I think they lose their pension. And I do believe that there's going to be a federal bill coming out on something like that, coming out pretty soon, that if they are caught up in something like that, they'll lose their pension. Because that is an act of treason, and so that paperwork should be coming there hopefully in the next couple of weeks here, which I've heard. So I like to see that come up a little further, but we'll see how that does. And don't forget, you have to insert your rights, and that's the one thing too. It's learning the wording to use how to make your structure more firm. More strong. You want more strength. It's like the 14th Amendment was never passed, never ratified. Most have got it now. Most people freaked out and are freaking. Some of these judges are freaking out when Trump came out with this. The 14th Amendment was never ratified. I was glad that a whole bunch of people were out there putting that information around, and he was able to get that information, and he brought it up on national TV. And then these judges are freaking out, and I got two other judges that I've got to finish letters this week because I'm writing letters on these two other judges because they're trying to halt the wall coming up. And it's like they have no authority to do that, so I'll file treason charges on them like I did before on some other judges that changed their mind. And we've seen that, and it's filing treason charges. I mean, believe me, I do this stuff when I talk about this stuff. I literally do this stuff. So, I mean, and that's one thing, that when cities can't own property, that's the main thing that people got to realize, that they can't own property. They have no rights. Banks can't own property either. The only ones that own property are lawful bloodline natives. And there are laws that actually say that, too. That's like the hemp law. People don't realize that, oh, well, you're going to go to jail for smoking. No, and you never could. And believe me, I do know. Because the law clearly states that hemp is for personal use. Doesn't say that, it's out there for commercial use. Now, if you want to do commercial use, now you're entering into a different structure, unless you are using it as a bartering tool. And that means, you're swapping, that product for another product. Then you're bartering. And, it's learning how to stay out of the system. I was blessed, growing up because I knew about tax fraud and all this other stuff going on. I saw it, listened to it. Of course, it helped growing up around Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein and Jerry Brown and a whole bunch of these other people I grew up around. And some of them had really good attention, some were really honorable, and then some are like Pelosi that'll stab anybody in the back. And it's like, when you look at the structure, warrants are financial statements. That's how they're making the money. They're paying them through the structure of the straw man account. They're billing it through. That's like when if somebody's kidnapped or held in for ransom in jail. When you're in jail, they bill your straw man account. And they bill, then they bill the city and the county. So anybody who's registered for them, so they're getting it paid 3 times. And then at the end of the year, they're writing it off on taxes. So now they got 4 structures they're writing off to make money. That's why I always suggest file a 1099. You put a 1099 form in there for them to fill out, you're going to see some changes. So, these things are positive. These things are, need to be corrected. And that's the one thing that has to be done. And it's our responsibility, folks. This is the one thing that, we are the public servants. We are the owners of the public servants. They work for we the people, the lawful bloodline natives. They're not working for immigrants. They're not supposed to be doing this. And even like when Biden even said, it's a federal crime to hire immigrants, and it is. And then he's doing this, hiring them and opening the doors and shipping them around. It's a federal crime. So this is what I'm talking about. He's committed treason. So that is the one thing that, it's like, the 18th Amendment, excessive fines. Excessive fines mean anything. Any fine you pay is excessive. So, it's like when you look at these structures that they keep coming after and telling us that we need to live this way, we have to do it this way. It always upsets me when I hear people say, we have to do it this way. And it's like, no, we don't. Because we watch attorneys and judges do this stuff all the time, rape, robbing, and pillaging. It's like, I would like to be up at the Capitol right now raising hell. Believe me, it's been a long time since I've been up there visiting and seeing what's going on and speaking. And that's the one thing, too, if you go back in some of these treaties, even the treaties say that natives are not to pay income or taxes or anything. We're exempt. And there's federal laws that says natives are exempt from even property taxes. So how do we get these public servants to start honoring this? I'm fighting with an issue right now. I'm getting ready to start battling again on my soil again. And I got people that are saying, no, you should run. You should go move somewhere else. Make it safe. You cause too many problems, Ed, because you speak up. It's like, I know, I do. And it's been interesting because I know it's been told me many times, your reputation precedes you. And I always think that was it. I always think that's interesting because it's like, which side of the reputation are you getting? That's the one thing that, people don't clarify. And that's the one thing that people need to start clarifying these things, where we're standing, where we're at, and how we're standing. Anybody else got anything else they'd like to speak up tonight on?
Yeah, Ed.
Yep.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about the Black Laws Dictionary is a joke. It's not anything to worry about. Would you suggest getting a Bouvier's dictionary?
Yeah, that's a little bit better than the Black Law, because at least Bouvier's explains a little bit better instead of the things. Because if you look at Black Law Dictionary, it changes very rapidly every year. Every other year, the Black Law Dictionary changes. I haven't seen a lot of Bouvier make a lot of severe changes or anything in years.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what year the book is. It just get a Bouvier and
we actually, I think we have one on the website that you can download.
Oh, really? Okay.
Also, I think we do.
Okay.
Because I think we should have the Black Law Dictionary and the Bouvier Dictionary up online.
All I've ever seen was a second edition.
Well, when I'm running around, surfing around the internet here, next couple of days I run across it, I'll send it to you.
Okay. Also, you were saying about the warrants. That they, oh dang it, what was it? I remember you saying that it has to be signed by a grand jury, but then earlier you were saying that when an officer pulls you over, you were saying before they can search anything, you'll wait for the warrant.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what. Yeah, but I mean, it's still, wouldn't it have to be a grand jury that signs it every time?
Supposed to be. But even if they have a judge getting woke up in the middle of the night or something, he ain't gonna be really happy, because he has to have major evidence to make sure that warrant goes through. So that's the one thing. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but I mean, still, I mean, they, as corrupt as they are, they wouldn't have a judge. They would have a clerk administrator. Yeah. Sign it or rubber stamp it. Because, I mean, like I said, I've had that happen, and I never got the warrant, never saw it, but then they said they had one, but I never, that's what I'm trying to still get, find out who signed it and where did they get it from.
Right, and seeing that they've misplaced records, now you can go after them for destroying public records.
And isn't there a law that you're not supposed to
destroy public records? Yes.
I'm still trying to find that one, because that's destroying evidence, also destroying records, public records. I mean, that's two right in one.
Not only that, misuse of public funds.
That too.
You can't forget that one, because they got to pay for the ink, they got to pay for the labor.
Yeah, and now they just supposedly destroyed it. So, and then also you said on everything, 1099 form, on electric bill, water bill. What about banking? What about
in which regard to banking?
Depositing funds, withdrawing funds, opening an account, making payments on other bills. I mean, wouldn't you have to have a 1099 on just about everything you did? I mean, like even if you paid for gas, used a bank card.
Well, yeah, but you have to go through that to the bank unless you want to go to each place you do service at. I'm not going to go to the restaurants and serve them, because I want to make sure the waitresses ain't recording their shit. I want to make sure their tips go in their pocket, not into the system.
Oh, no. I was talking about the bank, because all the transactions would have to go through the bank.
Right.
And instead of running around doing all that, write a 1099 on the bank for all these transactions.
Yeah, you can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have an issue writing on the bank because, well, of course, I don't have a bank right now. I haven't had one in some time, but because I mean, I deal with cash, because I don't want to have all the other records. So I try to limit myself. I don't do internet banking. I stay off that. I never do any type of transactions on the internet at all. You are not protected. I don't care if the government tells you, we protect you. That's a lie. You're not protected.
Well, you remember a few years back, what was it? There was a kid, I think 12 years old, hacked into the, what's it called? The defense.
Oh, yeah, and they had another kid that hacked into global finance market, too.
Yeah, so, I mean, them saying that, yeah, right, really you're protecting me with what? I mean, because, I mean, if kids can hack into it, what makes you think anybody else can't? I mean, and plus these banks have been hacked into, that's information that's going out, and they're not really, they can't really trace it that well. And with all the money that they are spending, you figure they would use it more wisely to be able to track these people to get them for identity theft.
Yes, that's true. And that's the one thing, too, that you always file. That's what I'm doing right now. Everything I'm doing is I'm filing identity theft. I'm sending my emails to the city and counties. I'm sending it to the Foundation of Identity Theft, too. I'm making my record.
Yeah, and like I've told you, I've got to do the same thing, too, because was it the nursing home my mom's at? Somebody filled out the Health and Human Services paper, and I never gave their Social Security number. Gave my mom's Social Security number to them or my brother. So how did they get it?
Computer. Remember, all those places on Essential computer base, all they have to do is just type in the name, it comes up. Your police departments, your GHS, your elderly homes, and all that is all connected.
So again, it's just very easy to point the finger and go, identity theft.
Right.
Because they're all interconnected.
You got it.
Oh, I yield.
Okay. Anybody else like to bring something up tonight? Okay. So I got a high mark this today for the counter. And I'm not going to say the word again because I don't want to get another count. So, but with that, if nobody else has anything to add this evening, we'll just like to say good evening. And next Saturday, we'll put some other stuff together. And then, like I said tonight on the YouTube channel, I will be putting some of the stuff that I'll be putting the stuff I discussed tonight on the YouTube channel this evening, so that way it's there. So if anybody has any questions, they go back to that, and they'll be right on the YouTube channel. So I'll make sure that that's done, and then always insert your rights. Because if you don't sit there and assert your rights, you have no rights. Oh, and then, that's what it was. For Daniel there, it is not the function of our government to keep the citizens from falling into error. It is the function of the citizens to keep the government from falling into error. And that was American Communications Association versus Dodds, D-O-U-D-S, 339USC3002, 442, and that was 1950. So, yeah, I got that one out now. And so, like I said, they have the stuff here, and so I've always liked to include this stuff in. Yes, we get people all the time says, Ed, you're overkilling it. But it's like I'd much rather overkill it and then not miss something. If that makes any sense. I don't want to miss something on something. I want to make sure I overkill it because at least I know it's there. So, that's just the way I like doing things. Because then that way I could always put a cover letter together and I could always put the other stuff behind it, and then that way it still stands. So that's the way people need to look at these things. How, what, why, and how we're solving these problems, how we're going to solve these issues. And the only way to technically solve these issues is write the criminal complaints on the guy who took your car. I was talking to a lady last week, and I was trying to get her to get it together to, all right, hey, now you have to write the criminal complaint. And she's like, why would I want to do that? And I'm sitting there going, well, they took your car. They did this. Well, how do you expect to have any ammunition to fight back to get it? You have to start the trail on it. And then that way you have to know the driver's name that took your car. Because he gets the file, because he's part of Grand Theft Auto. He just admitted it. He took your car, and he admitted that he's a crook, Grand Theft Auto. See, that's the one thing that these words have a lot of meaning, and when you file them and you speak up on them, they have a lot of meaning. So it's just not like it's just floating in the wind. So it is a scary structure, a lot of stuff we do live today, but there are solutions to the problems. And we do have to admit, we are watching things change in the administration. We're watching the Democrats yell, scream more than I've ever seen them scream in the 50 years. Well, at least at least 45 years I really paid attention. I started paying attention, started thinking about this stuff, and started doing this stuff when I was 10. So it's like when I went in and got my first traveler structure. And, Mom, you need a license and do this, that, and the other thing. So I went in, all right, I don't give up my rights. I don't do this on the paperwork, and, people were going, Ed, you don't need to do that. It's like, yes, you do. If you don't cover yourself, nobody is going to do it for you. And that's the one thing that people have got to realize, that nobody's going to do this for you. I get people all the time that, call me up and want me to do their case. And it's like, number one, I don't know your case. I can give you some suggestions. But if I don't have nothing to go on, there's nothing for your case. And that's the one thing that people have to comprehend these words. Because you're writing your case. You have to prove your structure. See, they already made their claim. They've already made their stance. And they're just hoping that you're not smart enough to figure it out. And they really do. That's the way these people really do think. And so once you comprehend the way that your enemy thinks, then you can start winning. So anyhow, anybody else got one last word, or before we call it an evening? Okay, with that, then we'll say, bless it, and you all have a good evening, and may the Great Spirit and Mother Earth and the Creator look over you and take care of you.
Thank you for listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Remember, guys, as it has been on the screen multiple times through multiple shows, we do not take liability, for we are not professionals of any kind. We are just living men and women, whenever we do get females in here, that have got information that we're willing to share. Any information that comes off as advice is not advice, it's just we're informing you of what we've known or have read ourselves. You take full liability for your own actions and for your own cases and for your own research. With that, again, anybody who says this is a democracy is a traitor, a spy, or a moron. Or sometimes all three. Look at Pelosi. Pelosi definitely fits that right there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, yeah.
we'll all see you next week then, because we're only doing one show a week to make sure Ed sticks with us a little bit longer. Don't want to overwork our old workhorse here. I'd hate to have to shoot him down.
Yeah, I know. I would hate to have that done, too.
But he is giving good information to everybody, so pay attention. Hell, I'm using that information right now, and so far it's turned out to be great. In fact, I think the public servants from this town that I'm in right now are actually afraid of me. And that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, y'all have a good week, and we'll catch you next Saturday with another Disclaimers by Ed. All right. Night, guys.